We are born helpless. As soon as we are fully conscious, we discover loneliness. C.S. Lewis. I am lonely. If you are too, I hope this is helpful for you. For as sure as I am that I feel isolated in this world and cut off from companionship and brotherhood with like-minded fellow travelers, I know I am not alone. This video is about loneliness and the Mandalorian, a look at what this Star Wars story tells us about the path of the loner and our hunger for community. I'll analyze Bo Katan's skepticism about Mando and the Children of the Watch, and draw on Stoic philosophy and the history of the Star Wars franchise to speak about our cultural epidemic of loneliness that is quite literally killing countless people, primarily men, and it needs to be addressed. This is Geeky Stoics.
I was hoping that... You do not cover your face. You are not Mandalorian.
I am Bo Katan of Clan Kryze, and you are a child of the Watch. Children of the Watch are a cult.
Bo Katan Kryze is not amused by the expression, "this is the way." It's a calling card of the Children of the Watch, which we learn in Season 2 of The Mandalorian is a sectarian Orthodox Mandalorian group who follow a rigid idea of how you must live in accordance with the ways of the Mandalore. Bo Katan is on a Game of Thrones-esque quest to lead Mandalore into a new age, and her ambition is isolating. At the start of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, Bo Katan is alone, rudderless, and out of options. We find her secluded in the halls of her family castle, abandoned by her fair-weather supporters, and realizing for the first time in her individualistic existence that the strange zealots of the Watch have something she does not: a deeper sense of what it means to be a Mandalorian. She doesn't know anymore if being a Mandalorian is about a place, blood and soil, or if it's about a way of life and a creed. She will never say it, but Bo Katan is lonely. And the reason we're talking about this is because loneliness has become a real problem in the real world. Last year, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy did a full-court press to speak to the media about loneliness's negative impact on public health. England and Japan have both appointed
the first Minister for Loneliness
to work on the issue, which has exploded into our lives in the digital age. I'm personally very critical of government attempting to remedy this problem. It's a problem they helped create, but the recognition of the problem's existence is instructive. Whether you blame smartphones, the COVID-19 pandemic, remote work, streaming, or cars, American hospital beds are being crowded out by a generation of younger people expressing suicidal ideation, severe depression, and loneliness. The situation is even worse for our friends and family over the age of 50, but unlike children, those people die and disappear in relative silence. What are we going to do?
I'm not a joiner, Blue.
Me neither, Gina Carano, but sometimes I really wish I was. I've always felt somewhat lonely in my personal life. My personality is that of a person who says I'm not a joiner. I go to church, but I resist connection or doing things like call and response during a sermon. I'm involved in politics, but I don't drink the partisan Kool-Aid. Team Red and Team Blue are not appealing to me. I have only a few friends, and I struggle to transform casual friendships into deep ones. My guard is always up, and I've never succeeded at lowering it. The life of the Mandalorian as a bounty hunter resonates with me quite strongly. Loners always exist in any society, but the Mandalorians are different. They were scattered to the wind by civil war, tribal conflict, and finally total destruction by the Empire, leaving them with nothing but a few cave hideouts and contract opportunities to freelance their art of war. That's why so many Mandalorians throughout the Star Wars universe are in the role of roguish guns for hire, because Mandalorians live and die by their ability to be useful. Richard Reeves, president of the American Institute for Boys and Men, calls it neededness, how men conceptualize their purpose for living, and the metric by which they define being lonely. People need to be needed somewhere, by someone, whether by their country, local community, immediate family, a wife, children. but our connections to all of these institutions that provide those things are disappearing. A 2023 Wall Street Journal NORC poll showed radical declines in Americans' relationship to the value of patriotism, religion, family, and community service. The stated value of religion plunged from 62% to 39% since 1998. Community involvement dropped from 47% to 27%. Having children or family went down 29 points from 59% all the way to 30%. It's quite shocking. The only value on the list to increase its standing in the American mind was the importance of money, which rose from 31% to 43%. It seems America has raised a generation of bounty hunters and mercenaries. And these trends really began in the 1970s. George Lucas knew it when he drew out Star Wars and its spiritual framework.
That the conclusion I've come to is that all the religions are true. They just see a different part of the elephant. A religion is basically a container for faith. Faith is the glue that holds us together as a society. Faith in our culture, our world, our whatever it is that we're trying to hang on to. Is a very important part of, I think, allowing us to remain stable, remain balanced.
Star Wars began in a time of rapid social change, nihilism, negativity, and secularism, and it gave us the lonely farm boy who wanted to join a movement and become a hero. Then George Lucas's Star Wars read the tea leaves and produced the prequel trilogy at just the right time to instruct a generation about the trade-offs between safety and liberty during the beginning of the War on Terror and the birth of the American surveillance state. And The Mandalorian, under Disney's incredibly messy management, seemed like it was actually speaking to the moment with this story. Sociologist Jonathan Haidt has called the era we live in today the Tower of Babel moment, where we have an intense uncertainty about who we are, our history, what words to use, where we're going, and why. If I had to guess, this is why the slogan of "This is the way" resonated with fans and normies in the way that "May the Force be with you" did in 1977. That older generation was starving for spirituality in a suddenly secular Western world, and this current generation is dying for a return to simple, proven truths about how to live and how to die. But when you join up with a group that promotes traditionalism or belief in anything, people like Bo Katan come along and call you a cultist or a religious zealot. That's because everything looks like a cult to a loner with no ties or obligation to others. Bo Katan is starting to rethink everything by time we find her slouched in misery on her family throne. She was traveling with two like-minded warriors, Axe Woves and Koska Reeves, to put together a fighting force for the retaking of Mandalore. That was contingent upon her possessing the Darksaber, an artifact of Mandalorian power that now belongs by right to Din Djarin. It was acquired when he defeated a rogue Imperial warlord, Moff Gideon, in single combat. For Bo Katan to take it, she'd have to fight the Mandalorian, which both parties appear unwilling to do. So she's left with nothing and nobody. No homeland, no community, no family. I couldn't help but laugh at Bo Katan's struggle here. Perhaps she'd like to be part of a cult now. It's not perfect. In fact, it can be downright weird, but it's certainly better than whatever she is doing. And that's exactly what happened next. Bo Katan helmets up and joins the Children of the Watch.
Welcome, Bo Katan of Clan Kryze. This is the way.
This is the way.
Members of the Watch subscribe to more ancient dogmas about the way a Mandalorian is meant to live. Above all else, they do not remove their helmets in the presence of others, ever. It is forbidden, and an offense worthy of exile from the group.
Have you removed your helmet since?
This is the way, that slogan you now see all over minivan bumper stickers and Comic-Con t-shirts, is the Children of the Watch's vow to walk in tradition, stomach rules, meet expectations, and expand the creed. That last part is crucial. To walk the way is not just to wear your helmet, obscuring your individual identity. It is also to adopt foundlings into their way of life. That is the only way in which a tiny creature like Baby Yoda, aka the child, aka Grogu, could credibly hang out with Mandalorians and be considered an equal. Tolerance is foundational to the Watch. After all, everyone is the same once the armor is forged and the helmet goes on. The same cannot be said for Bo Katan's old crew, who have repeatedly tried to play gatekeeper on who can be Mandalorian and who cannot. The so-called cult is actually more open than the Mandalorians focused on blood. The Watch honors having children and welcoming outsiders who are willing to live within their culture. The future is their reason for being. The Mandalorian series begins with Din Djarin living in association with the Watch, and he's working full-time as a bounty hunter for hire. The man sounds visibly exhausted every time he finds his target and offers to
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
It's only when Din Djarin finds Grogu and takes the creature on as his charge that he unlocks a motivation and purpose for his life. He's energized. Grogu becoming a foundling brings the Mandalorian closer to his kin and begins his hero's journey. So maybe the Children of the Watch are a cult, but perhaps we should ask, are there worse things? There's not a universally accepted set of markers that separates a cult from a mainstream religious organization or even a secular club. I go to church and kneel before a wooden cross with 100 other people around me, which is very strange to non-believers, so I've been told. I also have been a Boy Scout since I was 12, starting first as a foundling or a scout, and now I'm an Eagle Scout and Scoutmaster. I suppose my child is a foundling. I'll never forget when I invited another parent to bring their son to a scout meeting and consider BSA, and her response was, I don't know, they're kind of culty. There is a kid in our scout troop who joked once at a meeting that we are a cult because we stand together in matching outfits once a week and recite a law and code calling on us to do our duty to God and country and to remain physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. So I'll say it once more. Everything looks like a cult to a loner who has no ties or obligations to others. Here is why the Children of the Watch are not a cult. We do know that cults have rigid dogmas. They're closed off from the rest of the world and center around charismatic leaders who often have exclusive rights to supersede those dogmas and live beyond the rules. In a genuine cult, the leader is the law. Typically, the laws of the outside world are also held in contempt, which is why cult leaders have a knack for ending up on true crime Netflix documentaries. Something that Mando experienced was that in cults, members can be rapidly exiled and branded apostates.
Then you are a Mandalorian no more.
Leave, apostate.
They get smeared, defamed, deemed untouchable if they step outside the pieties of the group. Mando was made an apostate for removing his helmet in service of Baby Yoda, so he was dismissed. The leader of the tribe within the Children of the Watch, known as the Armorer, oversaw Din Djarin's exclusion from the group, but his expulsion from the Way isn't final in the slightest. He was given a pathway to redemption, offered in very clear terms.
One may only be redeemed in the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalore.
But the mines have all been destroyed.
This is the way.
Travel to Mandalore, bathe in the living waters beneath the surface of the planet, and his transgressions against the community would be wiped away. The Armorer does not break rules to her benefit, nor does she defy the codes of conduct she enforces on members. Mandalorians who walk the way may come and go freely as they choose. We should all recognize what Bo Katan came to see, which is that the Children of the Watch are not a cult. And even if they were, there are worse things than joining. America's cultural and spiritual malaise has been a long time coming. That's part of why we do Geeky Stoics, to try and speak to that empty feeling and guide people back toward eternal truths, community, and a belief in higher things. That's what Star Wars is all about. George Lucas did not want Star Wars or Hollywood and entertainment to replace organized religion.
More and more people today, are young people in particular, turning to movies for their inspiration, not to organized religion.
I hope that doesn't end up being the course that this whole thing takes, because I think there's definitely a place for organized religion. That's a very important part of the social fabric, and I would hate to find ourselves in a completely secular world where entertainment was passing for some kind of religious experience.
We hope that these videos and these stories help turn you back and ignite your interest in those bigger things, those higher truths. Don't end up a Bo Katan alone, binge-eating Cheetos on the throne with no one in your life. I'll close with a great line from the Mandalorian's villain, Moff Gideon, where he says about the highly coveted Darksaber Bo Katan is after. The Darksaber, he says, doesn't have power. The story does. The Mandalorian, just like Star Wars' Skywalker tale that began in 1977, is one of those stories, and it has unique power to speak to fans through the fog of disillusionment. For a while, people were listening. I hope Disney picks this show back up again and makes it into a decent movie. Time will tell. People need it, and that's because this is the way.